Да, это он о себе говорит. Да, это он имел в виду. Да, нет. Да, аж просто все, да, да, нормально. Ладно, сами. Так надо. Ага. Кто будет занудить? Да, нет, да, наоборот. Да, он это уже себя говорит. Да. Ты что думал, что это? Ладно, он это себе думал, что да. Не, я просто да, да. Базы. Да нет. Ну нет, ну да.
Good afternoon, welcome. I'm Tony Cascardi, the director of the Townsend Center for the Humanities, and I'm very pleased to introduce our guest this afternoon, pianist Garrick Olson. As many of you know, Garrick Olson is regarded throughout the world as the leading interpreter of the works of Frédéric Chopin. Steingraber piano, there'll also be the chance for some musical illustration. The instrument and a very particular importance in its musical history. And using that as just a point of departure, I wonder if you would say some things about where the piano was as an instrument and in the history of its music when Chopin came on the scene in the early 1800s, and what he did with it. What difference did Chopin make for the history of the piano and its music?
That's a lot of questions. The piano more or less got going toward the end of Bach's life. Bach tried one of these new devices and didn't think very much of it. Am I audible? Yes. Its ancestor was the clavichord. The three big instruments that, of course.
In the 1970 International Chopin Piano Competition, and continuing right until the present 1970. As many of you know, Garrick Olson is regarded throughout the world as the leading interpreter of the works of Frédéric Chopin. Beginning with his victory in the 1970 International Chopin Piano Competition, and continuing right until the present year with a string of remarkable all Chopin recitals in Seattle, La Jolla, New York Lincoln Center, and most important, Berkeley Zellerbach Hall, he has brought to the world a stunning and truly rare combination of artistic virtuosity and musical intelligence. His repertoire is truly vast and reaches well beyond Chopin, including, I'm told, something like 60 concertos, as well as a wide range of chamber music, some of which he plays as a member of the Fog Trio. That's capital F, capital O, capital G for Georgia Flizanis, Garrick Olson, and Michael Grabanier. I first heard him speak in a series of conversations on radio station WQXR in New York on the subject of Beethoven, and thought then that he would be a superb guest to have in our forum on the humanities and the public world. This year, which marks the 200th anniversary of Chopin's birth, has been a particularly busy one for Garrick Olson. He's been traveling globally, playing, and speaking about Chopin and other questions. By mere chance, I was riding in a car on March 1st, on my way from Newark Airport to Princeton, March 1st being Chopin's actual birthday, or so scholars seem to have concluded, when on the radio came the sound of someone playing the piano, an 1848 Pleyel, in Chopin's house to mark the occasion. The pianist, you will have guessed, was Garrick Olson. This afternoon, he'll speak with us about Chopin and other questions, and thanks to the generosity of R. Casman Pianos, from whom we have this beautiful Steingraber piano, there'll also be the chance for some musical illustrations. I want to thank my colleagues at Cal Performances, especially Hollis Ashby and Matthias Tarnopolsky, for their help and collaboration in organizing this event. I had also much hoped that my colleague from the music department, Nicholas Matthews, would be here to help with the conversation, but
you probably know me if you know me at all.
This episode was made possible by Wix, and we'll tell you more about them later in the episode.
Today we're going inside a nuclear reactor, and not just any reactor, but the reactor that is used to make the rare isotopes of elements like berkelium, californium, the ones that are so important for synthesizing the super heavy elements.
So this is an old reactor, and the reason why this reactor is here is because of a gentleman named Glenn Seaborg. He had a lot of work at Berkeley Labs, and he had a vision of practicing that work on these heavy elements, but he didn't have a great supply of it.
And we can look forward with the hope that nuclear energy will become the servant of all all men everywhere.
He pushed the Atomic Energy Commission through the 50s, pushed and pushed and pushed, and finally, of course, he won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 1951, and he gave a little bit of credibility, and he finally made some progress in the late 50s, 1958, and the Atomic Energy Commission said, yeah, we want to do this. We want to build a reactor to produce heavy elements for you to do your chemistry. And so the commission looked around the country at the time, and at that time, in the late 50s, there was a lot happening with nuclear reactors. A lot of drawings, a lot of designs being put on paper, particularly here in Oak Ridge.
America's atomic city at Oak Ridge, Tennessee has been opened to the public, and even the opening was by atomic energy. Watch that tape.
Oak Ridge had the only school that was specifically designed for reactor engineering. It was called the Oak Ridge Reactor Engineering School. And this gentleman who's on the wall, Dick Cheverton, has a plaque up here. He was a student in that school at that time, and he'd come up with a concept, and the commissioner of the Atomic Energy Commission saw this concept and said, yeah, I think this is the one.
Glenn T. Seaborg needed a nuclear reactor with a high neutron flux so that he could get the elements to study. Up till then, he had gone to the sites where there had been nuclear tests and looked among the rubble for traces of these elements. And obviously this is not very environmentally friendly, and there's a limit to the number of nuclear tests that can be done, and people are not very interested in doing a test just to make some exotic elements.
In 1960, they broke ground on this site. And then they put the reactor building in and put the reactor in, and they were up and running by 1965. So for the first 20 years of operation, we produced these heavy isotopes, small quantities, but we produced them very regularly. We operated very regularly, and we operated often, meaning the total number of days we operated over the year was very, very large, 75%. Now we operate much, much less. About 50% of the year we actually operate. And our mission has shifted over the decades. Now our mission is neutron scattering, condensed matter physics, but we still have an isotope component. We still make isotopes. So we got a big window. This is our bay. Our reactor is actually to the right side of the pool. The yellow bridge has a dam underneath, and that, well, that doesn't have a dam today. I can see the dam is out. The dam is actually moved to the left. We're currently shut down for an outage, and but the reactor is in the pool on the right. Kind of, you see the stairway going down? That stairway goes down to a platform, basically, a grating. So we can lower that when we have the dam component. We still make operate. The total number of days we operated over the year was very, very large, 75%. Now we operate much, much less. About 50% of the year we actually operate. And our mission has shifted over the decades. Now our mission is neutron scattering, condensed matter physics, but we still have an isotope component. We still make isotopes. So we got a big window. This is our bay. Our reactor is actually to the right side of the pool. The yellow bridge has a dam underneath, and that, well, that doesn't have a dam today. I can see the dam is out. The dam is actually moved to the left. We're currently shut down for an outage, and but the reactor is in the pool on the right. Kind of, you see the stairway going down? That stairway goes down to a platform, basically, a grating. So we can lower that when we have the dam in place. We can lower that pool, and we can actually walk down there and perform maintenance and repairs. In the pool is the reactor vessel. We're a pressurized reactor, so we have a very sizable pressure vessel, and then the reactor core is actually inside of that vessel. The vessel itself is it's 8 feet across, so what, 2.5 meters? But the core inside of the reactor is where all the action happens.
This reactor is designed to produce neutrons, not to produce power. It's not trying to make electricity like, say, Chernobyl reactor was. So it's small, and it produces the neutrons at a very high rate, and then it burns out quite quickly. Each reactor core only lasts at its proper operating power about 25 days, less than a month.
The reason we pressurize it is to increase the boiling point of water so that we can cool without boiling our reactor, because we produce an enormous amount of heat along with an enormous amount of neutrons.
What's the liquid in the pool?
Plain water,
Just out of the tap, or do you purify it, or?
slightly demineralized, plain heat along with an enormous amount of neutrons.
What's the liquid in the pool?
Plain water,
Just out of the tap, or do you purify it, or?
slightly demineralized. There are still some water,
Just out of the tap.
enormous amount of neutrons.
What's the liquid in the pool?
Plain water,
Just out of the tap, or do you purify it, or?
slightly demineralized. There are still some minerals in it, but we do demineralize it. Water is all for cooling. All we're trying to do is remove heat. We produce a huge number of neutrons in ways that we can explain. 1,000,000 billion neutrons, 10 to the 15th neutrons every second hit a square centimeter. That's just 1 square centimeter. It's a huge number of neutrons. So the pool water is separate from the water that's inside the pressure vessel. And the pool water remains at about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The water inside the vessel starts out at about 120 degrees Fahrenheit. As it passes down through our reactor core, it raises about 36 degrees Fahrenheit, exits at about 156 degrees Fahrenheit. Way, way below boiling. This is good for us. Power reactors, they want to generate steam, but we don't want steam. Steam would be bad for us. We would like our water to be liquid. It's blue because there's so much metal in there. It really isn't blue. And we get that question often, but it's pretty, but it's not like there's an additive. So this is a mock-up of our fuel. Our fuel is different. Power reactor, uses fuel rods. We use fuel plates, but they're arranged in a very strange arrangement compared to other research reactors even. Our fuel is placed in these plates that are in here. These are curved plates. And we basically have 2 fuel elements, an outer element and an inner element. This part in here, which has rods, these are not fuel rods, these are target rods. This area is an area of very high neutron flux. So this is the business end of our reactor for making isotopes. When we make Californium-252, which you may have learned about next door, or Berkelium-249, we make it in here, in the flux trap.
The main point of the reactor is to have a tube in the middle in which you put your samples in fairly long, thin, essentially metal test tubes to be irradiated. And neutrons are important because these heavy elements can be formed by bombarding lighter elements with neutrons.
These fuel elements are mostly aluminum, but inside of these fuel plates is uranium. So we have we use U3O8, which is uranium oxide, and it's sandwiched in between 2 aluminum plates. So we basically protect the uranium, but allow it to cool very effectively by having these very small channels to force the water through, and that's why we raise temperature from 120 to 156. All that heat transfer happens through these plates. So the plates themselves are about 24 inches, but we call the fuel meat, the uranium, is really about 20 inches tall. So about 20 inches of fuel meat, and the rest is aluminum. Our fuel, actually the uranium, comes from the Y-12 National Security Complex. And we get our uranium for free. However,
Не понимаю. Вот это и есть ансамбль. Вот это и было. Да. Нет. Ну, тебе так думаешь? Да. Да. Вот это он имел в виду. Да, это тебе он. Вот это тебе. Очень Чечня. Ну, наоборот, только делать. Ну, он про себя так и говорит. Смотри, это да. Потому что быть лидером это страх всегда, это да, понимаешь. Ну не важно, да хватит слов уже, да, надоел. Да. Ты понял же, да. Ну, вот и всё. Можно порыть, да. Нормально, да нет, он где-то думал. Видишь, что творится вообще. Да, блеющие жизнь. Ну, это делает, да. Да, себе он так делает. Да. Ну, не. К. Пускай. Да, вот. Наоборот, длины. Ну, кстати, нет. Кстати, нет. Да. Ну нет, он, ну это было. Да, да, да. Нет, это вообще не я. Да. Зачем? Да, конечно, наоборот, это представитель. Да, да. Да, это, наверное, ну, Гангу. То есть как бы типа, то есть типа, да. Ладно, ладно, хорошо. Ага. Да. Да наоборот, да наверх просто все. А, удаленный просто. Да, тут все лежит, да. Так, где тут?